Remembering. Memory arrives first in the mouth, a small, hard thing, a marble of sensation rolling between the molars, returning from somewhere it had gone to hide. Back and forth, over tongue, warmed with saliva, thick with sensation that obscures the confusion. Memory is not only memory, it is knowledge, instinct, the quiet treaties our bodies sign with the places that hold us, the soil agreeing to carry our footprints, the air agreeing to enter our lungs. Sometimes remembering is like a flower opening backwards, petals peeling away to reveal not fragrance but time, many moons ago, as the old stories say. But who decides which memories are truth and which are simply the mind protecting itself from too much sadness? Many moons ago. And when that truth fades, quivers, contracts, and is no longer of value, the language of remembering also becomes unstable, leaving a space to be filled between us and the world, when everything that's been leaving is now coming. Forgetting, a sensation like falling out of the world. A way to soften the panic when survival itself becomes uncertain, when the ground beneath one's life loosens. Sometimes forgetting is mercy, when habitat disappears, when home becomes a rumor, when safety, those long, quiet stretches of time in which a body can rest without fear, vanish. And sometimes forgetting is prosperous to others. The ecological crisis of forgetting has been underway for a long time, so long that those of us living inside it cannot see its beginning, only sense a thinning of the garden. To lose footing in one reality, contracting into another, to be lost to the garden precisely because you have ceased to be a caretaker, unwillingly, through the forces of dementia, derangement, and delusion, to fall out of one world into another. In forgetting, we become the unwilling citizens of the void. The bear. The bear does not know it is famous. It does not know it has walked through ancient cosmologies, padded across continents of myth, that somewhere in the night sky its shape has become drawn in the stars, pointing travelers towards the north. The bear does not know it has been a teacher, in stories of peace, in stories of forests, in stories about how the world holds together when humans remember they are only one animal among many. Once there were bears everywhere. They walked the great expanse of the sweet lands in the vespertine hour, that time when the sun lingers on the horizon, below and above. Across mountains and valleys and riverbeds, turning soil, spreading seeds, rearranging the quiet architecture of the landscape. Their bodies, libraries of ecological memory. In the textbooks of the Americas, this time of abundant roaming has a simpler name, pre-colonial, which is another way of saying before ecosystems learned the language of disappearance. A mother bear and her last cub standing at the thin edge between survival and memory, between extinction and the story that will be told about it later. Today the bear appears in unexpected places, in laboratories studying dementia. Scientists curious about how the strange intelligence of hibernation, how deep sleep and cold air seem to repair the brain, how cycles of hunger and rest might heal what modern life has broken. Yet bears are most present in the study of dementia as signifiers of comfort, the child's teddy bear pressed into the arms of those whose memories are dissolving. In nursing homes, in memory care wards, a gesture of comfort for people who are slowly losing the coordinates of the world. But might the bear play another role in accompanying us in these collective times of falling out of the world? not just as an effective symbol of childhood memory and instruction, but a deep awakening of our relationship with nature that beckons us into the wonder of the unknown, calling us to roam and replenish the equilibrium of the vespertine hour. What if sundowning syndrome is not agitation and confusion of the coming night, but the deepest rage of disappearance? Yellow-clawed animal unable to reach home, old bones unable to rest in bestial comfort, confined by lazy boy chairs, loud televisions, advertisements, packaged food, and the smell of ammonia. A world made of plastic rooms. Without a cave to sleep in or the water to quench thirst, the extinct bears and the deranged humans reflect one another in sad prisms of cheap technologies that deny the impact of a warming planet. The inverted logics that the wild represents childish fantasies and not our deepest desires to live in safety and peace and healthy habitat drive these times of dementia, derangement, and delusion. The ventriloquist. Ventriloquism is the art of throwing the voice, of placing words somewhere else, into a dull mouth, into an empty space, through electromagnetic signals, into bodies that do not belong to the speaker. But what happens when the voice is thrown so far that even the speaker forgets where it began? When the words that describe what is happening, untethered, under attack, genocided, extincted, deported, dismissed, denied, distorted, deranged, delusion, dementia, arrive too late. The earliest ventriloquists were not entertainers. They were oracles. At Delphi, a woman sat above the breathing caverns of the earth. She listened to the murmurs rising from underground and translated them into prophecies. The earth spoke, she listened. The voice passed through her. But centuries later, the oracle has disappeared. The voice changed. The words no longer require translation. They are perfectly audible. The new dangerous language is when no one can identify where the voice comes from. A useful phenomenon for those who believe that governance is simply a choreography of deception. Perhaps losing language is another form of forgetting. Dementia again. Words become tools detached from the lives that once gave them meaning. They float in the air like debris, no longer tethered to soil or water or breath. Concrete replaces the apex predators. Rivers are drained to power the endless energy required to watch one another, and no one knows who is speaking anymore. Water becomes data. Land becomes capital. Ventriloquists of greed throw their voices. The ventriloquist moves space just as the bear does, but one is a steward and the other a taker, a moneymaker. They both tell this story. The displaced, the displacing, the settlers, the unsettled, the steward, the destroyer. Are we the dull mouths controlled by algorithms, deaf to the untamable wild? Or can we hear the moist breath of our ancient bear cousins? The vespertine hour. What was once simply binary, zeros and ones, has multiplied into vast networks of agentic information, moving too quickly for feeling to follow. A pattern-like constellation of algorithmic information, tapestries and textiles of potential, hindered only by a finite planet. But there is another binary system, older, quieter. Our grandmothers understood this language. In the cross-stitched lace, in the patterns of X's and spaces, information woven slowly by hand. They sat beside beds of the sick and wounded, stitching worlds into being while tending to fragile bodies. Caretaking, healing, feeding, gardening, forms of labor that rarely appear in economic statistics. Does the handmade lace of my ancestors carry the plaques and sticky substances of the dementia disease? Is their disease a product of living in a world where what is of value is taken for granted, dismissed forms of doing, like natural resources that only take on value once it can be exploited? Timelines of slow gestation, of wild things that are not quite men. Dusk, when the mountains turn pink, the bear sits at the mouth of the cave. Above it, the constellation Ursula Major spreads across the sky, the familiar shape of the Big Dipper hidden in the belly of the bear, pointing northward, a celestial memory. The earth hums softly then, carried by the tiny labors of insects and flowers and stars. And in that suspended moment, we remember the older codes, the invisible strings of stewardship that hold mountains, rivers, and human lives together. Spider-web stories stretching across generations, hand-stitched archives of survival. Our ancestors speak through these patterns, through lace, through soil, through the quiet intelligence of ecosystems. Their voices remind us that transformation happens in the spaces between dusk and night, between remembering and forgetting, between falling away from the world and falling back towards our earthly home. The end, the beginning.